What if the biggest mysteries of divine justice and human nature aren't, found in a theology textbook?
Right.
But what if they're hidden in the microscopic math of ancient Greek grammar? Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I am so glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, we are taking on a pretty highly technical, purely academic challenge for this deep dive.
We really are. We are looking at a resource called the Lexham Syntactic Greek New Testament, specifically the SPL edition, and we are putting Romans chapter 1 under the microscope.
Which is, it is a fascinating way to look at the text.
It is, because if you are reading a standard English translation of this letter today, you get a beautiful, flowing narrative.
Yeah, it reads very smoothly.
But we aren't just reading the smooth translation today. We are going to investigate the actual grammatical bones of the text.
The structure.
Right, the structure. We are talking about how nouns, participles, and prepositions act like load-bearing walls. We want to see how the rigid mechanical structure of the Greek language dictates the meaning of the letter.
Because looking at the syntax, it removes the guesswork.
It does.
That is the beauty of a resource like the Lexham database. It categorizes every single word, showing objectively how ideas connect to one another.
Yeah, it's not just a subjective reading.
No, not at all. When you trace the arrows of a preposition or, when you examine the voice of a verb, you aren't relying on a modern translator's theological bias. You are looking at the math of the language.
The math of the language. I love that phrasing.
And in the first chapter of Paul's letter to Rome, that math reveals a stark, objective picture of both human nature and divine justice.
Let's start right at the beginning then, verse 1.
Okay.
The text starts with the noun Paul. In Greek, it's Paulos. He is the subject of the sentence.
Right, the main subject.
But the Lexham text shows us that this noun is modified by 3 specific words in what is called an appositive relation.
Yes.
Now, I know that sounds like heavy jargon, so how does an appositional clause actually work in this context?
Well, in Greek syntax, when words are in apposition, they are stacked alongside the subject to redefine it or clarify it.
Okay, so they give more detail.
Yeah, and they share the same grammatical case as the subject. So Paul isn't just listing a chronological resume of things he does.
Right.
He is listing what he fundamentally is. The first word stacked next to his name is doulos. It is a noun meaning slave.
Slave.
Yeah. The second is apostolos, a noun meaning apostle. And the third is aphorismenos, which is a verb functioning as a participle, meaning to set apart.
It is, it's kind of like handing someone a business card at a networking event,
That is a great way to think about it.
You don't just write your name in the center. You stack 3 distinct titles under your name, and those 3 lines define your total identity in that room.
Right.
So Paul's business card reads, Paul, line 1, slave, line 2, apostle, line 3, set apart.
And the first title on that card is the most crucial one to unpack. The word is doulos, slave.
Let's look at that.
The Lexham database shows us that this noun is modified by 2 other nouns, Christou and Isu, Christ Jesus.
Okay.
Both of these nouns are in the genitive case. Now, the syntactic force here can be read as a possessive genitive.
I want to pause there because we hear terms like genitive and we tend to, we kind of gloss over them.
Sure.
What does a possessive genitive actually do in this specific sentence?
A possessive genitive indicates literal ownership.
Literal ownership.
Yes. The syntax marks Paul as the property of Christ. He isn't a volunteer.
Right.
He isn't an independent contractor deciding to hand out flyers for a new religious movement. Grammatically, his entire agency is bound up in being owned by Jesus Christ.
That is heavy.
It is. The noun slave is inextricably linked to the owner through that specific grammatical case.
And the third title on that business card takes that lack of independent agency even further, I think.
It really does.
The word is aphorismenos, set apart. The text notes this is a perfect passive participle.
Yes, the passive voice is key there.
Right, because I know the passive voice implies the action was done to him. He didn't set himself apart. God did the setting apart.
And that passive voice is essential for understanding Paul's entire worldview. He is the recipient of the action.
He receives it.
Exactly. And right after that passive participle, we hit the preposition is, which translates to for. The Lexham analysis notes this is a preposition of purpose.
What does a preposition of purpose do?
Prepositions of purpose act like structural joints in a sentence. They point to the target of the verb.
Okay.
Paul was set apart, and the preposition points directly to the noun euangelion, the good news or the gospel.
So it points to his singular purpose.
No.
And that gospel is further modified by the noun theou, God, again in the possessive case.
Right.
It's God's gospel. It doesn't belong to Paul. So Paul establishes this incredibly tight definition of who he is and who Jesus is right out of the gate.
He lays the foundation immediately.
But then, as we look at verses 3 and 4, the grammar defining the Son creates a massive contrast between two different spheres of existence.
It does. It contrasts the word sarka, meaning flesh, which is tied to the seed of David through a preposition of source. That preposition is ek, meaning of or from.
Okay, so Jesus comes from the lineage of David according to the flesh.
Yes. But the text immediately contrasts that physical lineage with the word pneuma, meaning spirit. And spirit is modified by the word hagiosines, holiness.
I have a question that always comes up when reading this specific section. In verse 4, we encounter the verb horistentos.
Right, the verb there.
The Lexham text defines the root as to appoint, to designate, or to declare. The grammar tags it as an action that happened definitively in the past.
It is an aorist passive participle.
Right. So does the structure here suggest Jesus became the Son of God at a specific point in time, like at the resurrection? Or does the grammar point to a public declaration of a reality that already existed?
Well, we have to look at what modifies that specific verb to find the answer.
Okay.
The verb is modified by the preposition ex, which translates as by or out of. The syntactic analysis notes this can be read as a preposition of source or causation.
So it points to the cause.
Yes. The target of that preposition is Anastasios nekron, the resurrection of the dead.
So the resurrection is the syntactic source of the declaration.
Yes. The grammar establishes the resurrection of the dead as the causation of this appointment.
Oh, wow.
The passive voice of the verb means Jesus was acted upon by the Father to declare his status. It isn't arguing that he was not the Son beforehand.
Right.
Rather, the grammar roots the supreme, undeniable authority of the Lord Jesus Christ in the historical event of the resurrection. The resurrection is the syntactic proof of the claim.
The resurrection is the syntactic proof. I think that is a brilliant way to phrase it. It grounds the theology in an actual event.
Very solidly.
Now, I want to trace how this heavily defined identity dictates his relationship with the people he is writing to.
Let's do that.
When we look at verses 8 through 15, Paul is laying out his desire to visit the church in Rome. And the first thing that jumps off the page in the Lexham tagging is the sheer volume of adverbs related to time.
The temporal adverbs are relentless in this paragraph.
They really are.
We see proton, meaning first. We see pantot, meaning always or at all times. We see polakis, meaning many times or often.
It's a lot.
It is. These adverbs are modifying his verbs for giving thanks, for praying, and for planning to come to them.
When you stack always and often and unceasingly on top of your verbs, you are grammatically constructing a fixed mental state.
Yes, you are.
He is obsessed with getting to Rome. But we have to ask why he's so obsessed. And the grammar gives us the motive through an infinitive of purpose in verse 11.
Right. The verb is eidein, meaning to see. He longs to see them.
Okay.
And it is connected to another verb, metado, meaning to give a part or to impart. He wants to see them in order to impart a spiritual gift.
I'll play devil's advocate for a second here.
God.
That phrasing sounds heavily like a one-way street. It sounds like the great, highly educated apostle is coming down from the mountain to fix the poor, struggling students in Rome.
I can see how it reads that way.
It feels very top-down. How does the actual syntax of the Greek balance out that assumption?
To find the balance, we really have to examine verse 12.
What's there?
The text introduces the verb sympereklethenai. The root means to encourage together. But the crucial part is the passive voice.
The passive voice again?
Yes. Paul isn't just coming to actively encourage them, he's coming to be passively acted upon by their encouragement as well.
It is mutual reception.
Yes. And that mutual reception is reinforced syntactically by two other elements.
What are those?
First, the preposition, which is a preposition of location here, translated as among. He wants to be among them.
Okay.
Second, the reciprocal pronoun alleloi, meaning one another. The grammar levels the playing field completely. Faith is a shared mutual resource. It flows both ways.
He literally says your faith and mine.
Yes.
Which leads us to a massive syntactic identity marker in verse 14. We encounter the word ophilites. It translates to debtor or under obligation.
That is a very strong word.
It is. The Lexham text tags it as a predicate nominative, which means it renames the subject.
Yeah.
So Paul is saying, I am a debtor. But look at who he is in debt to. He uses correlative conjunctions, te and kai, both and.
Okay.
He is bound equally to both Greeks and barbarians, both wise and foolish.
When we look at the historical context of the first century, the Greco-Roman world was built on severe cultural elitism.
Oh, absolutely.
Greeks viewed anyone who didn't speak Greek as a barbarian. It was a harsh, stratified society.
Right.
But Paul's syntax destroys that hierarchy. By using those correlative conjunctions, the both and, he places the highly educated Greek philosopher and the uneducated barbarian on the exact same grammatical plane.
That is wild to think about in that culture.
His obligation to them is identical. The syntax of his calling leaves absolutely zero room for cultural or intellectual snobbery.
He owes the gospel to everyone equally. And I think that sets up the central thesis of the entire letter, which we find in verses 16 and 17.
Yes, the core statement.
This is the defining thematic statement of Romans. And it starts with a negative adverb. Ooh, not.
Modifying the verb episkinomai, meaning to be ashamed. I am not ashamed.
Followed immediately by the explanatory conjunction gar.
Right.
He's about to give the specific reason why he isn't ashamed. And the reason is structured around another predicate nominative.
The noun euangelion, the gospel, is the subject. The predicate nominative is dynamis, meaning strength, might, or force.
Okay.
And it is modified by the genitive of source, theou, God.
So the gospel isn't just a story about God's strength. Grammatically, the gospel is a strength of God.
Then we have the preposition ei, translated as for or to. This is a preposition of purpose.
Pointing toward a target.
Yes, the strength of God has a specific target it is moving toward. That target is the accusative noun soterion, salvation.
And who is that salvation for? The text gives us an ordinal adverb, proton, first, applied to the Jew.
Right.
But it's immediately connected by the correlative conjunction kakai, meaning also to the Greek.
The grammar handles time and scope in a really fascinating way here. The ordinal adverb first establishes a strict historical sequence.
The history matters.
It does. The covenant came to the Jew first in history, but the correlative conjunction also establishes a universal scope. The historical sequence doesn't limit the universal application of the strength of God.
Let's dig into verse 17, because this is where the theological rubber meets the road.
Okay.
The subject of the sentence shifts to dikaiosine, righteousness. And the verb acting upon this subject is apocalyptitai, to reveal or disclose.
Right.
The Lexham tagging shows this is a present passive indicative verb.
The present tense indicates continuous action. It is currently being revealed.
Okay.
The passive voice indicates that righteousness isn't revealing itself, nor is man discovering it through his own intellect. God is actively disclosing it.
And how is it disclosed? We have a prepositional phrase that has caused centuries of debate. Ik pisteos eis piston. From faith to faith.
That is a famous phrase.
It is. The text tags ik as a preposition of source and is as a preposition of purpose or direction.
How do you visualize that grammatical structure?
Well, think of a massive suspension bridge.
Okay, a bridge.
You have the preposition from on one side, anchoring the start of the bridge. You have the preposition to on the other side, marking the landing.
Right.
But the material on both sides is the exact same noun. Pistis, faith. The foundation on one side and the landing on the other are constructed from the exact same material. There is no other material introduced into the construction. It originates in faith and it results in faith.
And that syntactic bridge leads directly to the Old Testament quote that closes the segment.
Yes, it does.
The main verb is zesetai, a future tense verb meaning shall live.
The righteous shall live.
But look at what modifies that verb. It is our preposition of source again, ek, by or from, modified by the genitive object pisteos, faith. The righteous shall live by faith.
What does that mean for the listener analyzing this text?
It means Paul's syntax here creates a mathematically closed system.
A closed system.
Yes, the action is passive, we receive the revelation. The source is faith, the destination is faith, the mechanism for living is faith. The grammar systematically strips away any noun or verb that would suggest a person earns this righteousness through action.
That is a heavy realization just from tracing prepositions.
He really is.
But the tone of the letter shifts violently right after this. We go from the revelation of righteousness to the revelation of wrath in verses 18 through 23. This section deals with the suppression of truth.
It is a striking parallel in the Greek. Verse 18 uses the exact same present passive verb as verse 17. Apocalyptitai is being revealed.
But the subject is completely different. The subject is now orge, anger, or wrath.
Right.
And it originates from a specific location. The preposition ap, meaning from, points to the noun arnu, heaven. Wrath is being revealed from heaven against the ungodliness of men.
But the critical syntactic feature here is the participle describing these men. Katachonton.
The Lexham text defines the root as to hold down, to suppress. The tagging shows it as a present active participle.
So the present tense means it is an ongoing action, and the active voice means they are doing it intentionally.
They are actively pinning down the truth.
Yes.
It makes me think of trying to hold an inflated beach ball under the water. You have to exert continuous active force to keep it submerged. The moment you stop pressing down, it violently breaks the surface.
That's a great visual.
And how are they holding it down? The text gives us a preposition of means. The preposition is en, meaning in, or by means of.
Okay.
And the object is adikia, unrighteousness. Their unjust actions are the very mechanism they use to suppress the truth.
If we are analyzing this objectively, a listener might raise a natural objection here.
What's the objection?
How can someone be held accountable for suppressing something they might not fully grasp? Maybe they just don't know the truth they're supposedly holding down.
That is the first defense anyone would make. But the grammar doesn't allow for that defense.
No, it doesn't.
We move to verse 19, and the sentence starts with the conjunction diati.
Yeah.
Because,
Right.
this is the causal subordinate clause, Paul is providing the exact cause for their guilt.
He uses two very specific adjectives to describe the knowledge of God. First, nostin, meaning known.
No.
Second, phaneron, an adjective meaning visible, clear, plain, or evident. These are absolute terms.
It isn't vague. It isn't a subtle hint hidden in the clouds. And why is it plain? Because of the verb ephanerosin. God made it plain.
It is tagged as a completed action in the past. God actively manifested the truth to them.
We see this reinforced in verse 20 with the verb katharatai, to discern clearly.
Right.
The invisible attributes of God, his eternal might and deity, are discerned clearly through the things he made.
The passive voice implies the creation forces this realization upon the observer. The observer is passively receiving the data of creation, which clearly points to a creator.
Okay, so they receive the data.
Therefore, the syntax renders them, and the text uses this specific adjective, anapologetus, without excuse.
Which brings us to the tragic exchange in verses 21 through 23. This sequence is horrifying when you break down the parts of speech.
It is.
It starts with the circumstantial participle nantes, knowing God.
They had the knowledge. The participle proves they possess the information.
But that knowing contrasts sharply with the main verbs of the segment. The negative adverb ouch, meaning not, modifies two verbs.
What are they?
Adoxasen, to honor or glorify, and eucharistasen, to give thanks. They knew, but they actively chose not to glorify or give thanks.
Which leads to the active verb alaxin in verse 23, to exchange.
Let's look at the visual detail of this syntactic exchange. It is a literal trade happening in the grammar.
A trade, yeah.
The direct object of the verb exchanged is the noun doxon, glory. This glory belongs to the God who is described with the adjective evthertu, imperishable, incorruptible, immortal.
They trade the glory of the imperishable God for a prepositional object, homoioma, likeness or image.
Okay.
And the text lists what these likenesses represent. It uses a string of nouns in the possessive case, indicating what the images belong to. Images of perishable man, images of birds, images of quadrupeds, and images of reptiles.
The grammar charts a steep downward spiral of worship.
It really does.
They start at the top, knowing the imperishable creator. They exchange him first for the image of a perishable human.
Right.
Then they downgrade to birds. Then they downgrade to animals walking on four legs. Finally, they reach the bottom of the grammatical list, worshiping reptiles that slither on the dirt.
The syntax visually demonstrates the degradation of the human mind when it suppresses truth. It is a total collapse.
It's a complete collapse.
Yeah.
And that collapse demands a response, which brings us to verses 24 through 27, where we see the syntax of divine judgment. How does God respond to this active suppression?
The mechanics of God's response are laid out in verse 24. The verse begins with the conjunction dio, therefore.
Therefore.
The Lexham text tags this as an inferential conjunction. It shows a direct, unavoidable cause and effect relationship from the previous verses. Because they did all of that, therefore, this happens.
And what happens is built around a terrifying verb, perdoken. The Lexham tags it as a definitive, completed action in the active voice. It means to hand over or to give over. God is the subject performing the action, and the people are the direct object. God actively handed them over. I want to pause here and look at this conceptually, because this is a massive theological idea rooted entirely in the grammar.
Let's unpack it.
When we think of divine judgment, we often imagine an act of striking down. We picture lightning bolts from the sky or a catastrophic flood.
Sure.
But this verb, perdoken, isn't the grammar of God striking a society with lightning. It is the grammar of a leash being unclipped.
Syntactically, God is the one unclipping the leash.
He removes the restraint. Think about walking a massive dog that desperately wants to sprint into a busy intersection.
Okay.
You are holding the leash, restraining the dog's natural desires for its own safety. If you want to judge the dog, you don't have to hit it. You just unclip the leash and let it do what it already wants to do.
That makes perfect sense.
The release of the restraint is the judgment. God gives them over. To what? The preposition of direction, edisuria, points to the object. Teith epithemias tun cardian auton. The lusts or cravings of their hearts, he hands them over to their own internal desires.
And the Lexham database identifies an infinitive of purpose or result right after this.
What is the infinitive?
The verb is atamazestai, meaning to dishonor. He handed them over to their lusts, resulting in the dishonoring of their own bodies among themselves.
The syntactic echoes in this section are chilling. Verse 25 repeats the tragedy of verse 23, using a compound form of the same verb, metalaxton. They exchanged.
Right.
They traded the truth of God for a specific prepositional object, to susai, lie.
Notice the definite article there. It isn't just a lie, it is the lie.
The lie.
The core lie that the creature's worthy of the Creator's glory.
Right, and the text proves that with the next clause. They worship and serve the creation. And then we hit the preposition para. The Lexham text tags this as a preposition of substitution, translating to more than, rather than, or instead of. They substituted the creator with the creation.
Which forces the second sequence of judgment in verse 26. The verse starts with the preposition dia, because.
Because.
This is a preposition of causation. The substitution of the creator is the exact cause for the second occurrence of the verb perdoken. God gave them over again.
But the direct objects shift this time. He doesn't just give them over to the general desires of their hearts.
No.
The text uses the nouns pathitemias, dishonorable passions. The leash is unclipped even further.
We need to outline the precise grammar of verses 26 and 27 here because Paul uses parallel sentence structures to describe the result of these dishonorable passions.
Walk us through that.
He starts with the females exchanging the natural function for that which is against nature.
And then verse 27 begins with the adverb homoios. Likewise. Or in the same manner.
Yeah.
This adverb of manner applies the exact same structural rebellion to the males. The text uses an active participle for abandoning the natural function, and a passive verb meaning they were consumed with their desire for one another.
The syntax of this section concludes with a grim resolution. We find the circumstantial participle apelemenantes receiving.
What are they receiving?
The direct object is ten antimistheon, the recompense, or the penalty, and the genitive noun modifying that penalty is tessiplanes of their error.
What does that mean structurally for the concept of judgment?
It means the penalty is grammatically linked as the unavoidable, built-in consequence of the action itself. They are actively receiving in themselves the penalty that fits the error.
The penalty is built in.
Yes. The judgment isn't an external force applied to them. The judgment is the grammatical realization of their own substituted desires. God's wrath, in this specific text, is syntactically defined as his passive allowance of human self-destruction.
God removes his hand, and the system collapses on itself. Which leads us to the final, darkest phase of this analysis. Verses 28 through 32 detail the culmination of the debased mind.
This is the final logical progression of the chapter, and it hinges on verse 28, specifically on the conjunction kathos. Just as, or in proportion as.
Okay.
This creates a comparative subordinate clause.
Let's read the load-bearing walls of that clause. Because they didn't see fit to etchkine, an active infinitive meaning to have or to hold God in their knowledge.
Right.
God executed the third and final paradoke, and he gave them over.
The proportion is exact. They abandoned the knowledge of God, therefore God abandoned them to a mind incapable of proper knowledge.
The punishment matches the crime.
Yes. The target of this final handing over is described with the accusative adjective adokumon, modifying the noun. Noun. A base, worthless, or disqualified mind.
A mind that can't pass a basic test. A mind that can't discern structural integrity. And what is the result of a worthless mind?
Let's look.
The Lexham text points to the infinitive poien, to do.
To do things that are not proper. This sets off one of the most intense grammatical sequences in the New Testament. Verse 29 introduces the circumstantial participle peplerominus, meaning having been filled or stuffed full.
The Lexham text tags this in the perfect tense, which means they were filled in the past and they remain completely full now. The passive voice means this condition was brought upon them as a result of the worthless mind.
And what are they filled with? The syntax piles up a relentless list of nouns in the dative and genitive cases.
I will read through the root meanings of these words because the sheer volume of them is suffocating. Unrighteousness, wickedness, greediness, malice, envy, murder, strife, deceit, malevolence.
The syntactic structure functions as a complete, exhaustive catalog of human ruin.
It is a long list.
And notice the progression within the nouns themselves. It moves from internal hidden states like greediness and envy, outward into active communal destruction, murder, strife, gossips, slanderers.
The internal becomes external.
Exactly. It moves from an attitude of being arrogant and boastful to the active contriving of new evils.
The text calls them epheretes kaikon, inventors of evil. They have exhausted the known ways to rebel, so their worthless minds invent new categories of rebellion.
All of this brings us to the final verdict in verse 32. This is the climax of the argument.
We see a familiar word reappear here. The circumstantial participle epignos, knowing. The root is to know or to recognize fully. They know this. It is an established fact in their minds.
What do they know? The direct object is to dikaioma. The requirement, the regulation, or the righteous decree of God.
They know the structural code of the universe. They know the building is going to collapse. Specifically, they know the requirement that those practicing such things are axioi, an adjective meaning worthy or deserving of death.
So they have the knowledge of the Creator from verse 19, and they have the knowledge of the moral requirement and the penalty from verse 32.
They possess all the data. So how does Paul conclude the analysis of human rebellion?
He details a final, devastating grammatical construction. It relies on correlative conjunctions that balance two distinct actions.
Okay, what is the first one?
The first conjunction is oumenon, not only. It modifies the active verb poison, to do. They not only do the things worthy of death.
But then we hit the adversative conjunction. Wow. But also, it forces a contrast and an escalation.
The conjunction but also modifies a different verb entirely. Synodocousin. The root means to agree with, to consent to, or to approve of.
Oh, wow.
They not only do the things, but they also approve of those who practice them.
Here is the theological hook hidden in the syntax. The grammar proves that the ultimate expression of human rebellion against God isn't, merely the commission of the act itself.
Right.
The lowest point of the spiral, the absolute bottom of the structural collapse, is the active communal endorsement of the rebellion.
Yes.
It is looking at someone else, destroying the load-bearing walls of their own house, knowing the roof is going to cave in and cheering them on.
It is the formalization of the lie. The syntax moves from the individual suppressing the truth internally in verse 18, to the individual exchanging the truth for an idol in verse 23, to the society mutually encouraging and applauding the rebellion in verse 32.
The whole sequence.
Yes, the progression is mathematically mapped out by the verbs.
Let's unpack this and synthesize everything we have traced through this Lexham syntactic analysis. We started by looking at the appositional identity of a messenger.
We did.
A man defined grammatically as the literal property of Jesus Christ, set apart for a specific purpose. We looked at the mutual obligation of faith, built on reciprocal pronouns that level all human hierarchy.
We saw the thesis statement where the gospel is equated with the sheer strength of God to save.
Right. And from that height of divine grace, the syntax took us through the mechanics of human depravity, the active verbs of suppressing plain truth, the tragic exchange of the imperishable for the perishable,
resulting in God's active, repeated verb of judgment, giving over a society to its own desires, handing them over to a worthless mind until they are filled with a catalog of ruin, culminating in the communal approval of their own destruction.
The linguistic architecture of this chapter is incredibly rigid.
It is so tight.
The causal clauses, the prepositional arrows, the shifts from active to passive voice, none of it is accidental. It forms an ironclad logical argument.
Every piece has a function.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over. When we read a text, any text, but especially one with this much historical weight, we usually just scan the surface.
We look for the main idea.
Right. We look for the paint color. We look for the general idea, the emotional resonance, the nice summary. But it's the very syntax, the prepositions, the active versus passive voice, the direction of the verbs, the genitives of source.
The structure.
Yes, the structure. If the microscopic grammar carries this much weight and reveals such a stark, objective picture of human nature and divine justice, what are you missing in your own daily reading by skimming past the structure?
That is a great question.
If you don't know where the load-bearing walls are, how do you know what is holding the house up? Thank you for joining us on this intense, purely structural deep dive. We will see you next time.